Can you imagine a life where you don't have control over your own body and mind? Just think about it. You can't visit places and enjoy your time without worrying about abnormal movements that your body would make. It would disrupt your everyday life. In addition to that, you might suffer from depression or dementia. Because of these disadvantages, you might live a shorter life. It sounds kind of miserable, right? Well, that is how a person with Parkinson's disease lives. Hi, I'm Hansini Koney, and in this video, I will talk about this disease. Let me start the video with a little bit of history. You might think that this disease was discovered recently, but that is far from the truth. This disease has been known to our ancestors. In the Ayurvedic medical system, this disease was known as Kampavata, where Kampa was known as tremor. In 175 AD, it was described as shaking palsy. Galen made this discovery. In 1817, James Parkinson described the disease as a neurological syndrome. He observed the classic symptoms of the disease in 3 of his patients. He theorized that the disease developed because of the brain's medulla region, which is not completely true. Now, we should talk about the definition of this disease. It is a progressive nervous system disorder that affects motor movement and the brain. This type of disease has progressive deterioration in functioning. The most common form of this disease is Parkinsonism, which does not have a cause, but there is new research that suggests that this disease is split into 2 parts. It could start in the brain or the intestines. This explains the varying symptoms of this disease. Because of this evidence, we can say that the gut microbiota is likely the cause of the disease. It is involved in the disease because it regulates neuroinflammation. Neuroinflammation is the inflammation of the nervous tissue. The loss of nerve cells in the substantia nigra is also a cause of the disease. But there is also evidence that says that the Disulfovibrio bacteria is also a cause of this disease. This type of bacteria belongs to a heterogeneous group of anaerobic bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria is basically a type of bacteria that needs oxygen. They also produce hydrogen sulfide. Earlier, I said that the loss of nerve cells in the substantia nigra causes the disease. But why is it the leading cause of getting this disease? Let me explain. The nerve cells in this part of the brain are responsible for producing a chemical called dopamine. Now, dopamine controls body movements. These cells have neurotransmitters to control movement. If these nerve cells die or become damaged, the amount of dopamine in the brain is reduced. This means that the part of the brain controlling movement cannot work properly, but the loss of nerve cells is a slow process. The symptoms of this disease only start to develop when around 80% of the nerve cells have been lost. For now, no one knows the reason behind the loss of these nerve cells, but we can say that genetics and environment play a key factor in it. If your DNA has mutations in the SNCA gene, you might get this disease. You could also be affected by certain pesticides and head injuries. Thankfully, coffee drinkers and tea drinkers are at a reduced risk of getting this disease. But the real culprits are the Misfolded proteins and the Lewy bodies that are involved in this. Lewy bodies are clumps of proteins that can form in the brain. When they build up, they can cause problems with the way your memory and thinking skills work. A misfolded protein is something that cannot achieve its normal native state. This kind of protein is caused by genetic mutations. Misfolded proteins are bad because they will destroy the other cells. A characteristic component of a misfolded protein is called alpha-synuclein, a protein that is made by the SNCA gene. These molecules can form small repeated units called oligomers or longer fibrils. There is a lot of evidence that says that these are toxic to neurons. Because of that, they kill the neurons. But that molecule isn't the only thing that kills neurons. Even proteins do the same thing. Usually, the unwanted proteins are cleared by the cell's different types of protein-degrading machinery. These proteins are potassium, a protein that removes damaged proteins, and autophagosum, a spherical structure with double-layered membranes. Some evidence points to these symptoms being overwhelmed by misfolded alpha-synuclein, and this might be a factor in what kills the neurons in the brain. Parkinson's has always been linked to problems with the mitochondria. The mitochondria provide cells with the energy to perform vital functions. They are highly dynamic and can fuse together or break up into smaller versions in response to a cell's energy demands. They can also be transported to areas of a cell that needs them the most. However, in Parkinson's, these processes can be impaired, and the mitochondria are unable to sustain proper neuronal function. As they become old or damaged, the mitochondria are removed or replaced. Again, this cycling is thought to be disrupted in the Parkinson's disease, leading to the accumulation of damaged or worn out mitochondria. When it comes to the Parkinson's disease, the symptoms start gradually. Most of the time, it starts with a barely noticeable tremor, but we should still be aware of the danger behind this disease. So we should learn about the motor symptoms of the disease. And FYI, motor symptoms are the type of symptoms that are related to body movements. Now, when we talk about tremors, we should say that it describes an uncontrollable movement that affects a part of the body. It can happen when you're resting or doing nothing. It can be controlled by a pacemaker that uses electrical impulses to control abnormal body movements. Then, there's a possibility of getting postural instability. It refers to imbalance. After that, we have dystonia. If you experience tightness and pain in your muscles, you may have dystonia. After that, we have dizziness. If we want to define dizziness, we could say that it is a loss of balance. After we learn about the symptoms of the disease, we should look at the way it is diagnosed.
Usually, doctors use MRIs and blood tests to diagnose the disease. It also uses a specialized test called a DAT-SPECT test. This disease can track dopamine in your brain. To learn more about the diagnosis of this disease, we should learn about MRIs. They use radio waves to make pictures of your body. There are also giant magnets in the MRI scanners. Because of this, they produce a strong magnetic field that forces protons in the body to align with that field. To diagnose this disease, scientists use a technique called the resting state functional MRI. They use this process to assess the strength of nerve cells in the basal ganglia. This approach may help visualize the impact of the damage on the brain cells. Now, we should look at the average age of getting PD.
Parkinson's disease typically occurs in people over the age of 60. Usually, only 1% of the elderly are affected. If we look at the statistics, in 2015, PD affected 6.2 million people and resulted in about 117,400 deaths globally. The average life expectancy following diagnosis is between 10 and 20 years. Luckily, it is rarer for someone to die from it. No cure for PD is known. After you learn about the age of PD patients, you need to know the medicines used to treat this disease. People diagnosed with this disease use two main medicines, levodopa and MAO-B. When levodopa is taken orally, it crosses into the brain through the blood-brain barrier. Once it crosses, it is converted to dopamine. It also improves nerve conduction and allows people to move freely. MAO-B also increases dopamine in the brain. At the same time, it produces a side effect of involuntary muscle movements. In the later stages of the disease, the medications may be used in bigger doses. After we discuss the medicines, we should be concerned about the type of surgery provided for this disease. To treat this type of disease, there are two main types of treatments. The treatments are deep brain stimulation and subthalamotomy. Deep brain stimulation is the gold standard for the surgical care of patients with Parkinson's disease. DBS is an FDA-approved surgical procedure to implant an electrode, which delivers continuous electrical stimulation to a specific area of the brain. Now, we should learn about the next treatment. It is subthalamotomy. In this treatment, the small portion of the brain called the subthalamic nucleus is destroyed. This helps relieve motor symptoms of PD like tremor and rigidity. Now, we should dive into the stages of this disease. In stage 1, it is the mildest form of Parkinson's. At this stage, there may be symptoms, but they're not severe enough to interfere with daily tasks and overall lifestyle. A distinct symptom of stage 1 Parkinson's is that tremors and other difficulties in movement are generally exclusive to one side of the body. Prescribed medications can work effectively to minimize and reduce symptoms at this stage. It is the mildest form of Parkinson's. After that, the symptoms become a lot more moderate. The symptoms are much more noticeable. Stiffness, tremors, and trembling may be more noticeable. The progression from stage 1 to stage 2 can take months or even years. When stage 3 comes, it marks a major turning point in the progression of the disease. You're now more likely to experience loss of balance and decreased reflexes. Your movements become slower overall. Medication combined with occupational therapy may help decrease symptoms. After this stage, it is a lot more difficult to walk without external assistance. You need a walker or other type of assistive device to walk properly. Many people are unable to live alone at this stage of Parkinson's because of significant decreases in movement and reaction times. Living alone at stage 4 or later may make many daily tasks impossible, and it can be dangerous. This is where things get tricky. In stage 5, the symptoms become a lot more severe. There can be muscle stiffness and an increased number of tremors. Advanced stiffness in the legs can also cause freezing upon standing, making it impossible to stand or walk. People in this stage require wheelchairs, and they're often unable to stand on their own without falling. Around-the-clock assistance is required to prevent the patient from falling down.
It sounds a bit bad, right? The good news is that there are ways to not get this disease. When a person in their 40s starts exercising, it might reduce the risk of PD later in life. You could also start it at your age. Just because you are young, you are not the exception of getting this disease. In addition to exercising, other caffeinated drinks act like an armor against this disease. Some scientists said that non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs can help this disease. Now, these type of drugs reduce pain. This type of research has helped us reduce the cases of PD by 15%. After I talked about the ambiguous nature of the disease, it makes people wonder about the future of it. Well, I looked into it and I found a treatment that could help this disease. The treatment's name is Neurotransplantation. It is basically about repairing the brain cells that are lost from Parkinson's disease. It is a promising area of future treatment. This procedure replaces deceased and dying brain cells with new cells that can grow and multiply. But this type of research has had mixed results. Some patients have improved with the treatment, while others have seen no improvement. Even though it doesn't really work, let us hope that they find a new cure. Well, we reached the end of the video. I just want to say that this project has helped me expand my horizon in the world of diseases, and it helped me gain video editing skills and analytical skills. I hope that you learned something new in the process of watching this video, and thank you for watching it.